good, guys? It's Ilson 4K, and today I want to welcome you to the second ever episode of the cultural importance and impact of, with today's topic being Beetlejuice. Yes, Beetlejuice, the ghost with the most, portrayed by Michael Keaton in the 1988 Tim Burton classic. Beetlejuice is one of the most crazy films that ever existed for its time, and really took the idea of what a film could do visually and emotionally and completely changed everything. I mean, this is the film that actually took the idea of a horror comedy out from the depths of the unknown and took it right into the mainstream. I mean, Scary Movie might not have been able to do what it did if not for the horror comedy coming before it like this and pushing it from, like I said, an oddball affair into a mainstream affair. Furthermore, from there, we can talk about the fact that this movie really changed all of the cast members' lives. I mean, Tim Burton went on to become one of the greatest visual directors of all time. We have the fact that Michael Keaton went on to become, Batman and 900 other things. This was Winonaryder's breakout thing. I mean, she did great in Edward Scissorhands before, but this was the one that really broke her out and took her from like an upcoming starlet to a full-blown star. Again, there's just so much we have to cover when it comes to this movie because it was so culturally important and changed a lot of things about cinema and entertainment moving forward that definitely would not have happened if it wasn't for this film. So that's stuff we all need to look at. And speaking of stuff you won't believe out of a $15 million budget, how much of it was allotted to special effects, because it is a very little amount and you're not ready to hear it. So make sure you pull up your handbook for the recently deceased, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget, we're watching the cultural importance and impact of Beetlejuice right here on ILLtv, so make sure you stick around. Well, it was most certainly quite some time ago. The 80s was a radical time for entertainment. I mean, things were really changing and censorship was becoming less and less, and it got to a point where the 80s was just so chock full of insanity that nobody even knew what they wanted. I mean, it was just carefree entertainment throughout the land. And the craziest part was kids' entertainment was equally as crazy. I mean, yes, we had things like G.I. Joe, My Little Pony, but we had this weird thing where, like, they would take an 80s IP that was clearly R-rated, like The Terminator or RoboCop or something like that, and turn it into a kid's toy, and then they would go and turn it into like a kid's cartoon, and it was really fascinating because it was this blending of adult entertainment into the kids' world, and it was almost like nobody knew what to make of it.
RoboCop! With the armored Ultra Police and rapid repeat cap firing,
he's unstoppable.
Evil criminals beware, cause here come RoboCop and the Ultra Police, each sold separately with RoboCaps. When darkness falls, justice shines through. It's RoboCop Night Fighter. He glows in the dark, he's specially armed, and he's free. Free with 3 proofs of any RoboCop and the Ultra Police figures. Package. This offer ends.
But this led to the fact that kids, ironically enough, seem to know a lot about horror icons. Yes, horror icons were a pretty big thing, and I'm talking not just the classic ones, such as the fact that as a kid we all grew up and had a Frankenstein toy, or a Wolfman toy, or a Dracula toy. I'm talking about the fact that as a child, I knew who Jason Voorhees was. I knew who Freddy Krueger was. I knew who all those guys were, and they absolutely scared the hell out of me. But what I didn't know is what any of their movies looked like, because of course, there's a line that has to be drawn. You know, this carefree 80s entertainment. You cannot be taking a kid to go see a gory slasher film, especially from that era where the practical effects would have scarred a kid.
I'm Freddy Krueger, and I've got a new recipe for terror. Dial this number now for Freddy's favorites. Take a half a cup of horror, a spoonful of fright, and a pinch of the bizarre. Then bring to a boil for gruesome accounts of hideous misadventure, torturous tales, and agonizing anecdotes. The scariest stories in town.
First minute sense teach you to children get your pets before you die.
But that could be what people like to say is a bridge that Beetlejuice tried to gap. Yes, Beetlejuice was the closest thing we were ever going to get as kids to a horror slasher, even though he doesn't actually kill anybody, right? And the whole fact that he was such a misunderstood character from the get-go that even when Michael Keaton was approached by Tim Burton to play this character, Michael Keaton said,
"You for Beetlejuice."
I didn't understand what he was talking about.
Really?
I had no idea what he was talking about, but I liked him.
Yes.
I went, wow, this guy's something. And so I said, I wish I could do it. You seem like a really nice guy, and I know you're creative, but I don't know what I don't get it. And I got a phone call to him again, and I liked him, so I thought, sure. And I said, explain more to me.
And from there, eventually Michael Keaton understood it and started seeing where he wanted to go with it. But this movie was that radical and groundbreaking at the time that everyone who had to take the cast actually denied the script the first time around. Yes, every single person you see in this movie turned down the script at first. And wait till you hear who fucking Tim Burton wanted to be Beetlejuice later. His first pick is out of control. But this is what made Beetlejuice so fascinating. The fact that someone was trying to make a horror-esque movie for kids, hence the comedy horror genre really getting its shine from this movie and changing after it all came out. You know, Beetlejuice really was kind of the perfect movie for the perfect time, not just because of the whole slasher horror icon thing, but because of something else that you're going to hear me talk about a lot in this, and that is the fact that the gross out humor was starting to come of age. Yes, in the 80s, that's when the gross out humor really started. I want to say it really started with the Ghostbusters films, with everything having slime, Slimer, all the toys and IP that came associated with that after the fact. You had slime flavored toothpaste. You had a lot of stuff coming up that lets you know that the gross out humor was on its way.
Attention, the slime pits are overflowing and slime is erupting all over the universe.
I love slime.
It's faceless, mindless, spineless, and now it's free.
It's free.
Free when you buy any 2 Masters of the Universe figures. Get a free can of slime at participating stores until May 31st.
Or until slime supplies run out.
Slime, a free gift from Will you get before it?
And Beetlejuice, almost as if they had a psychic on set, saw what that was and made it its own. I mean, that movie is really diverse in the gross out factor. There are so many things about it that are gross. I mean, the one scene that sticks in my mind since I remember seeing this thing in the 80s is a scene where Michael Keaton pulls his jacket to the side and just hocks a loogie into it and keeps on going. I think it's really funny because gross is subjective, much like art. What grosses out one person might not gross out the other, and if you ask them to sit and watch this film and you find out what's gross to them, you might find out it's something that doesn't bother you at all. And I think that's really magical because they really hit it from all angles in this film in terms of that affair. Now, speaking of this film, I guess I should talk about what this film is about so that way we can get on it, even though we should all know by now. Married couple dies, finds out that they're dead by going to an office, comes back from the office, finds out that new people, the Deets, have moved into their house and they try and scare them away, but it turns out they can't even see them, except for the Deets' daughter Lydia, who can in fact see them and can talk to them and communicates with them. Long story short, they find out that there are ghosts in the house, they being the parents. They try to exploit them. Lydia calls upon Beetlejuice to scare these people away, and it just turns into one of the greatest films of all time. Honestly, that's the best way to sum it up, because I know you've all seen this goddamn film. And what's really amazing about the film is we can't even just rely on the fact that Michael Keaton was absolutely outstanding as Beetlejuice, but everybody around him was fantastic as well. I mean, this was Winonaryder's breakout role, like you heard me say, and she absolutely did a great job. Ginadavis is the wife along with the Baldwin, fantastically how they play on the fact that they're dead, and seem to acknowledge it like it's really there. The acting, again, from everybody is so universally awesome that it helps draw you into the immersion.
What do you look like under there?
Aren't you scared?
I'm not scared of sheets. Are you gross under there? Are you Night of the Living Dead under there? Like all bloody veins and pus?
If the what?
Living Dead, it's a movie.
I ain't seen a ghost that you were scared out of my wit.
The movie also really took what could be done with the film visually and changed it drastically. Because instead of being, one crazy place or not, it's one crazy place or the normal house. Or the normal house and then they're back at the crazy place. Or sometimes they take the house and turn it into the crazy place with the visual effects. And the visual effects are like nothing that was ever seen before at that time. Literally like a Saturday morning cartoon come to life. When you see Beetlejuice pop out of the ground with the big mallet arms and send the people up through the roof. I mean, again, just so well done on the visual side of things that you can't even deny the fact that this was something that only was done for $1 million is very impressive.
Welcome to Winter River, Museum of Natural Green, a monument to the born businessman. Come on a little closer. Step right up, test your strength.
Yes, out of a $15 million budget, this movie only spent $1 million on visual effects, and it's hard to believe that given how awesome and how expansive they are. I mean, we even can remember, what's it called? The little priest who's trying to marry Lydia and Beetlejuice? He was a tweaked out little guy too. And in that end scene where Alec Baldwin drives the car off of the full-size model ramp and rams into Beetlejuice's foot, again, the perception of depth was fantastically well done.
I now pronounce you
Yeah, come on.
man and
Now, I can't ignore the thing we all want to hear me talk about and we all loved. Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice. Yes, I had to save the best for last because I didn't want to discredit the other cast first because it's so easy to talk about Michael Keaton. But Michael Keaton's role as Beetlejuice in this was amazing. I mean, he took a character that he really didn't understand and made it something anybody can understand. And that's a lot of talent and charisma behind a guy to be able to do that because Beetlejuice requires a lot of charisma to play. I mean, the guy is just so self-servingly over the top and absurd and full of himself and feels like he can do anything, and he's just boisterous, but you can't help but root for him a little bit, even though he's a bad guy.
Save that guy for later.
My wife and I would like to ask you a couple of questions.
Sure. Go ahead, shoot.
Well, for instance, what are your qualifications?
Well, I attended Juilliard. I'm a graduate of the Harvard Business School. I travel quite extensively. I lived through the Black Plague, and I had a pretty good time during that.
I've seen The Exorcist about 167 times, and it keeps getting funnier every single time. Not to mention the fact that you're talking to a dead. Now, what do you think?
And that's why in the end they had to eventually turn him into a good guy when ABC ordered up a cartoon series of this that we'll talk about more on the Impact side and actually made Beetlejuice something that everybody could enjoy. I think the thing that's really exciting about this is the toy lines that came from this movie. The toy lines depicting Beetlejuice were fantastic. I mean, I loved every second of them. I actually had a lot of them. I had the car, I had the tombstone that can make the character disappear when you pulled it in and out the right way. I mean, it was something that you had to see to believe, and they were like no other toys before them because there was nothing like Beetlejuice before, so it was only natural it would sell.
Yahoo, it's me, Beetlejuice. Yo, Adam, check out my great new house, The Vanishing Vault. Scary.
Each sold separately.
Just lie down inside and say, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. Even small, I'm scary. Boom. Ah! Now, back to normal. Beetlejuice. Let me try it. Beetlejuice. Where'd he go? And that's why they call it The Vanishing Vault. Welcome back. The vault. I lost my head over it. Ah!
Beetlejuice Vanishing Vault. Microfigure.
Speaking of only natural it would sell, audiences everywhere loved this film. On a $15 million budget, it made $75 million in profit, and that was just domestic box office. That's not counting the merchandise lines, that's not counting globally, that's just what I pulled up domestically. Fantastically enough, the fact that we're getting the sequel to this really means a lot after we waited nearly 3 decades for it, and all the critic reviews that we got from back in the day that were heralding this movie, hopefully we get them in the sequel as well, because, again, Beetlejuice was just the perfect movie for the perfect time with the perfect cast. Now, the impact that Beetlejuice had on pop culture and phenomenon was unbelievable. I mean, shortly after the movie came out, it was such a hit with box office sales and home video sales that ABC actually ordered up a cartoon of it to be put on its Saturday morning cartoons. Yes, Beetlejuice was not just a cartoon, Beetlejuice was a legendary Saturday morning cartoon in the 90s.
Beetlejuice!
It's showtime!
But ironically enough, shortly after that, Nickelodeon bought the rights to it, and it made a lot of sense when we go into the fact of why, because not only was it a great show for the fact that it was a 30-minute depiction of Beetlejuice, it had gross-out humor. Yes, gross-out humor, the thing you'll hear me talk about a lot from this point forward. Beetlejuice was one of the films of the 80s that was really inching towards grossness. I mean, it was really a gross movie. As you heard me say before, in the early 80s, we had things like the Ghostbusters and Nickelodeon sliming people, but that was more of a kid's affair. It turns out after Beetlejuice really launched and became this multi-universal thing that you could take a kid to see, or you could take a date to see, people really started eating up that gross-out humor. And that showed a lot in the TV show that was eventually purchased by Nickelodeon, as it had a lot of gross-out factors with Beetlejuice eating bugs and running around trying to do weird things and being dirty.
What a day for a Neitherworld picnic. I can't wait to see what you brought for us to eat, Beetlejuice.
Well, for starters, there's corn on the slob. The main course is macaroni salad. And for dessert, strawberry snort cake.
But that was the way it was in the 90s overall. I mean, we had a lot of cool stuff in the 90s, and I'll give you an example. We had a thing that was like this evil dump truck Cars Come to Life affair. Even that had a feature where it would slime the other trucks. Who needs to slime another truck? I don't know, but I did, and I had it. I also had the alien toy that had the slime feature. I had the GAC. I had the Floam. All of that squishy, squashy stuff that really happened started and blew up immensely because Beetlejuice and then Nickelodeon kind of came along and pushed it even further once they bought Beetlejuice with this gross out humor and sliming people stuff. And it's one of those things that just, it existed beforehand, but after Beetlejuice came out, it really became the norm. I'm talking to the point where there were gross video game characters. We had Booger Man, who was literally a video game character that fought people by flicking boogers at them and farting at them and burping at them. Then we had someone named Earthworm Jim, who was literally an earthworm from the dirt put into a spacesuit, and he had some gross out facts as well. All of this stuff just was so popular in the 90s, again, across the board. Not just kids entertainment, adult entertainment, everything.
If you had jalapenos and beans for every meal, you'd have an atomic butt blast too. Booger Man for Sega Genesis. A superhero who doesn't need hand-to-hand combat because the best weapons of all come from within.
A great example of gross out humor that really was a big deal in the 90s in terms of movies was Dumb and Dumber. That was gross out humor, and that was a classic. Anything like that, you can kind of see how it was inspired previously by Beetlejuice. But that's not just a one-note thing for Beetlejuice. It isn't just the gross-out humor. The overall wackiness and zaniness of the character was very new, very charismatic, and very trademark of him at the time. I mean, we've always had crazy cartoon characters, but Beetlejuice was really like a vindictive Pee Wee Herman mixed with an Ernest P. Worrell. And there wasn't, again, anything that really was like that, not just in cinema, but in cartoons. A lot of people forget how impactful the Beetlejuice cartoon was upon the world of animation. You had things like Animaniacs, Freakazoid, and a whole bunch of other over-the-top twisted cartoons come out after Beetlejuice really got big with kids, and it's crystal clear that their inspiration was Beetlejuice. Most of them have toned it down and taken away the semi-evil factor that Beetlejuice has, and maybe they weren't so gross as they always seem to be, but there is just so much obvious impact from the Beetlejuice character as a cartoon into this. And speaking of the cartoon, I never really spoke about what the cartoon was about. More or less, Beetlejuice and Lydia Dietz get along now. Beetlejuice isn't trying to marry an underage girl, which is always a plus, I suppose. But the whole cartoon is just basically Beetlejuice and Lydia having adventures, either in Lydia's world or in the dead world where Beetlejuice is from. And that's where the real fun is had, because, you know, anything is possible out there, especially with those sandworms running around. It's something that was really just a unique affair, and just the way Beetlejuice was the perfect movie for the perfect time and the perfect place, the cartoon wasn't the most perfect cartoon, but it has its niche in the world, and there's a reason why Nickelodeon picked it up as soon as it could, because it saw the greatness of that movie, saw how good the cartoon was, and realized it fit in perfectly with their entire spectrum of kids being wild and crazy and zany and gross out humor, and again, just really, really smart maneuvering on Nickelodeon's behalf with that cartoon, because it fit their brand perfectly. In the end, I really gotta say, Beetlejuice is a core memory to me. I mean, I was that oddball kid growing up. I loved spiders and bats and snakes and creepy crawlies. I had tarantulas and scorpions as pets at a really young age because I had a really cool mom who really supported all of my absurd behavior. And this was like Beetlejuice was like a hero to me, but it wasn't just a hero, it was a really amazing form of entertainment and very broad and imaginative. It really opened my mind up to a lot of things. And I think anybody who's seen that film back at that time can say that it really just changed everything. I used to rent this movie so much that I probably wore out the VHS copy I rented from the grocery store. Yes, back when you could rent videos from the grocery store. How 80s is that? I must have wore that copy out so much, and my mom had no problem watching this movie with me 900 times because even she thought it was pretty good. I mean, it was fantastically well done. And this is a movie that really was the perfect movie for the perfect place for the perfect time. There was no better time or place for Beetlejuice to come out, and it's very rare that you see a film that really hits all of its artistic goals and collectiveness and really expanding upon itself by taking a prime advantage of its time and place like this movie did. I mean, it was just amazing. It was like the Scarface of kids movies, you could say. It came out at the perfect time. Scarface came out when you know what was popular. This came out when gross out humor and weird shit was popular, and it just exemplified it and held it and took it to the next level. I think it's really fantastic at the fact that I had to look at a whole bunch of lists to make this movie review. I mean, I looked at a bunch of top 20 lists to learn neat little facts and understand things. Like, the craziest part is, to this day, this movie actually still has an 80% rating on Rotten Tomatoes on both sides, both the audience score and the critic score, or whatever the people who think they're professionals have it. 80% on both sides, and that says a lot about Rotten Tomatoes giving this movie that good of a thing. But I think my favorite thing about looking at all the lists that I had to look at for this film, and remember, these lists are very old, is how many of them talked about the fact that there's a rumored sequel in development, and that is no longer a rumored sequel. It is actually happening, and I am super excited for it. And I want to know, are you super excited for it? How much did you like Beetlejuice? Tell me in the comments down below everything you love about Beetlejuice and how much you are or are not looking forward to the next film in the series. If you feel it's a film that just should be left alone or whatever, I myself, of course, will be there on opening day. Definitely will have a review on this channel for it. But again, guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you catch me every Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, twitch.tv/ILLtv 4K, streaming online, playing video games, whatever it is that we're playing. Sometimes it's horror games, sometimes it's AAA games, but either way, make sure you're there. We also stream here. Make sure you follow me on TikTok at ILLtv, Instagram, ILLtv Official, and don't forget, you're watching ILLtv, where if it's pop culture, you know it pops up here. You're watching ILLtv, where if it's pop culture, you know it pops up here.